Hello and welcome back. This is Project Sanity in collaboration with the Progressive Army. My name is Richard Green. I'm going to be hosting or co-hosting this segment with you see Dave down there and Brandon over there. And I think I pointed the wrong way. There we go. Anyway, I've been on a bit of a hiatus, but I'm back right now to give you guys some election coverage. As you've probably been aware, the election results are coming in, as you see this way. And early results have Trump ahead currently in popular vote. It looks like another chunk just came in, and Clinton has gotten ahead with 735,000 to Trump's 500,000. So that's likely to go back and forth as the night goes on, and different states and different polling places are closing and reporting. We're going to keep an eye on that, and later on we're going to have a Noah from The Way with the Noah coming on around 9 o'clock Eastern time to join us, and she's going to take over at that time for sure. And until then, we're going to go ahead and give you guys some election cover. I'm going to go ahead and introduce DC first, and then he can bring Brandon in. Go ahead, DC. There.
I'm DC. Hey, everybody. What's up, revolutionaries? Welcome back to part 2 of our impromptu election results show, election night show. We've been sort of having a combination of technical issues and scheduling problems over the last few weeks, so we haven't really been able to bring you too much Project Sanity or the robust opposition or anything really. So it's we felt sort of compelled to come back on the air on this auspicious night where it's looking to be a little bit of a race for now. Looking like things are sort of, I guess, some things that we were, I guess nothing is too surprising here. I mean, it's disappointing that Bernie's write-in movement didn't take over Vermont. But, I think we were pretty ready for Hillary to take Vermont because Bernie Sanders was supporting her there, and they love him up there. They'll do whatever he wants. So I don't think that's too surprising, although it is disappointing. Kentucky and Indiana, I don't think those are too surprising either. But what's kind of got my eye already is New Hampshire, the early numbers there, which I guess really are deceiving considering what those represent. And, of course, Florida, which really is going to be the first bellwether, I would say, that in North Carolina, as to whether this is going to be a longer night than expected. Anybody want to jump in on that idea?
This whole thing is depressing, and I'm depressed. I considered actually just breaking out into Johnny Cash's cover of the song "Hurt" instead of actually saying anything, but I figured that would get us a takedown strike.
We could do 30 seconds of it probably. We could probably do 30 seconds. We won't risk it. We won't risk it on this night because I'm sure
there's a long list of songs I got if we end up trying to do any of that.
They're gonna go. Yeah, that's the beauty of the old YT.
Yeah.
But okay, beyond the depression.
Well, beyond the depression, I want to do a bit of a retrospective on how we got to this point, because as these numbers are trickling in,
really scary when Brandon Sutton says I want to do a retrospective, that really scares me.
I'm very reflexive. I don't think it's a surprise to any of our viewers, either regular or casual, that I think about myself a lot. And
I'm just saying Hawaii polls don't close for like 6 more hours or so we could probably get through with it. But no, please go ahead, Brandon. Where are we and how have we gotten to this mess?
That was really sort of my way. I want to segue into talking about the Republican primaries, because that was the last time I had any fun during this election season, because it was majestic. The Republican primaries were a majestic series of events, especially the debates. So, I mean, this might be a bad thing to admit, but I didn't really watch any of the Democratic debates, because who wants to see Martin O'Malley shill for second place, or rather for a VP spot, with his sleeves rolled up? But I watched every one of the Republican debates multiple times because they were just immaculate.
With 15% I just wanted, sorry to break in here, but Donald Trump's still ahead, 51-46 with 15% reporting. So it's a good chunk in Florida. That's in Florida.
Oh, that's in Florida. I was going to say 15% where in Florida? Well, it's early, but we're gonna know pretty damn soon here. I mean,
I'll keep it limited, but that was a reasonably large chunk. So go ahead, continue.
yeah. Georgia. The other thing is, just briefly, Brandon, before you continue, Georgia's, I guess, too close to call right now too. So that's a little interesting. But go ahead, continue, Brandon.
I just biggest letdown of the Republican debates, Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush came in there, and I think everyone thought that he was the smart Bush. Like that was like the myth that we went into the election with, and we found out that no, Jeb Bush is not the smart Bush. He's the boring Bush. Uh, he's the lame Bush. Low energy.
I think they got a triple. They were 3 strikes in that family, man. They are all 3 of those brothers are just they got it. I don't know, something wrong. I mean, I'm sure Barbara's just going, oh.
Barbara said before Jeb even really started to hit the ground that she didn't think he should run. that was his own mother's opinion about whether he should run for president, and she said no.
We thought she was trying to save America, but really she was trying to save him. That was what she said. We don't need another Bush in the White House, and we thought, oh man, Barbara Bush is against this idea of like dynasties in the White House. Like, nah, Barbara Bush just knew Jeb was going to embarrass himself, and like any good mother, she just wanted. Oh, I'm sorry, this is not professional, but do you remember that line during? I think it was the third to last Republican debate, when Jeb Bush was talking about his mother and Donald Trump responded with, then maybe she should run. That was a classic. That was a classic one.
Yeah, that was probably one of the harshest stingers out of reminiscing on the Republican primary. That was one of the tightest insults. Go ahead.
And talking about the Republican primary, I do want to make this, statement or argument or whatever. And I don't think it's going to be. I really don't think it's going to be a contentious one. Donald Trump is not the worst result that could have happened in this situation. Not only in the sense that he is not the best chance that Hillary Clinton has to beat the Republican candidate, but he was not the most, most evil, the worst. The most militant candidate.
Well, unfortunately, his VP is a little in that category. So I wouldn't, that's really the scary part of this ticket, isn't Donald Trump. He's going to tweet out a national secret in the first week and be arrested and impeached, and then Pence is in charge. So,
but see, if we're going to talk about VPs, let me talk about Kane. Kane is also Kane is also not a particularly good person. In the sense that Kane, I keep saying Payne. Kane, I keep combining Pence and Kane in my head. Kane is, he's pro fracking, pro TPP. I believe he was also pro right to work legislation, maybe like 2 days before the election. Yeah, and he's the corporate pick. I think. And
he's also pro life. He's also anti-abortion.
Yeah,
Kane. You guys mean the future of the Democratic Party, right?
That's right, baby.
Kane was a very conservative pick, and I think that was the first point in which a lot of people who were more amenable to Hillary started to understand what she was all about, who she was courting, what the plan was for the future Democratic Party. Because
it took you that long to figure that out, waiting till she named Kane. I guess we were all hoping she would do Warren or Bernie, but.
I don't know. See, that's another question. I don't know to what degree Elizabeth Warren thought that she was going to be the VP choice for Hillary Clinton. Like, I don't know what she was. I don't know what her motivation for supporting Clinton was, or rather not supporting Bernie in the primary was. I don't know if she thought she had a VP spot coming up. I don't know what she thought the situation was, but I do get the sense from her post DNC, post convention, that she is very, very. What happened disappointed her in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I definitely get the impression that Warren most certainly thought that what was going to happen once Hillary secured the nomination was going to be different than what transpired after, whether that was looking at her future cabinet as a position for herself, or just the type of people that she was going to put there, particularly on the Wall Street angle. And it seems as though Warren doesn't think that they're going to be very collegial to work with, I imagine, is what the impression that she's getting from the Hillary campaign about who's going to be responsible for the economic side of her White House.
Well, I'll tell you, if she really wants to get us on board, she names Warren as Secretary of the Treasury. and of course, well, we'll see what happens in the Senate, and if Bernie gets the chairmanship of the Budget Committee, maybe, but we've got 2 years, basically, is what happened with Obama. We dropped the ball. Bernie talked about it early on. We dropped the ball for the first 2 years. We had the House, we had the House of Representatives, we had the Senate, we had Obama, and it went straight to the center. So, and he was a left of center candidate. And now we have a right of center candidate that's everybody's on board with this right of center neoliberal neocon platform. No one's saying squat about DAPL, about Mosul, about Russia's, threatening Russia with hacks if they fuck with our voting, when they fuck with our election. Hillary threatening basically, first strike. It's just, and nobody on the left, none of these progressives are talking about it. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's few and far between. And I remember way back when Ben did a show talking about how Trump was basically the only candidate to mention the civilian casualties of our Middle East involvement, and how silent the left had been about what the left's role, or President Obama and John Kerry and the left, the people on the left that have played the role in the Middle East and the devastation that we've caused since, not just getting out of George Bush's mess, but that that has been a result of our own actions.
Well, he's also started out more even hand with Palestine too. He was talking about yeah. Go ahead, Brad.
But that's ridiculous. So I'm sorry, that we've allowed Trump to get there. But go ahead.
I know, right? Yeah.
No. I don't know how ridiculous it is. Like the left is so disingenuous. Like the establishment left has been so stripped bare of all of their pretenses in this election that I don't know how they can ever readopt that position, that high moral position of being pro peace or pro minority or pro any of those things that have typically been their shield for neoliberal policies. And I said it during our pregame show that if people should learn one lesson from this whole Clinton and these progressives sort of just, I don't know what you'd say, full-throatedly embracing war criminals like Negroponte and Kissinger and corporatist policies and a neoliberal candidate, is that at the end of the day, people tend to pretend in hindsight that they were tricked into certain things, but at the present time, we are seeing very clearly that a good portion of America, not just the right, who are theoretically in favor of these things, but the left are full-throatedly embracing neoliberalism. Like that is what a vote for Clinton is. It's a full-throated. Keep saying full-throated. I don't know why I keep doing that. Maybe I need to reevaluate my love life. But it is a complete sanctioning and opening with welcome arms of neoliberalism and neoconservatism and all these other bad things that the left, quote unquote, is historically against. That's the story here. That people are begging for the yoke of neoliberalism. They are begging for more war. They are begging for it. All of these, these theoretical feminists, these theoretical anti-racists, these theoretical economic progressives, they are begging for these policies. Because they view these policies as the opposite of whatever Trump represents. This is no one's being tricked here. Everyone knows what they're voting for. Everyone knows what Hillary Clinton is in favor of. They're using that disingenuous language of she does this trust gap. People just don't. Sorry, how can Clinton close this trust gap? It's no, everyone trusts Clinton. I trust Clinton 100%. I trust Clinton 100% to be what she's always been. That's why I won't vote for her, because I refuse to welcome with open arms more neoliberalism, neoconservatism.
Well, see, the thing is that you're not understanding that all of Hillary's negatives are actually just part of a vast right-wing conspiracy now in colleagues with Russia. There's actually no negatives to Hillary Clinton.
No.
I've been reassured several times anyway.
What I understand is that
we do have some guests coming in to join us, so I did just want to mention that as well before we go on. Adair has helped us get some guests in, and hopefully Adair will be able to join us as well to help us introduce but if not, then we will see what we can do. So I just wanted to mention that. Go ahead and finish your thought, and then we'll check on to see if Adair's going to join us. Otherwise, we'll see if we can get a description, or we'll just have our guests introduce themselves.
What I understand is that people suffer very heavily from amnesia, and that the United States, whether they be, whether it's your Sean Kings or whoever, or your Chris Hayeses, are going to do what they always do, what Americans always do when they are on the wrong side of something, is pretend like they couldn't have known in 2 years. That's going to be, that's going to be what 2018 looks like. That's going to be what the expansion of drone programs looks like on MSNBC. How could we have known? It's almost like people, like, no one was saying anything. How could, because that was the message of 9/11. That was not 9/11. That was the message of the Iraq War. How could we have known? How could we have known that Bush was lying? It's like, well, people were saying it. A lot of people. Phil Donahue screamed it for a year until you fired him on MSNBC. So, like, I don't mind people voting for Clinton. I do not. I don't mind you telling me that you're afraid and that Trump is so bad, or maybe even that, listen, I'm rich. I'm white, I'm straight. I have a white daughter. So when I elect her, it's all positive. I don't care about Muslims. I don't care about that stuff. It's all positive. Just say it to me, and I'll go, okay, well, whatever. I think you're a bad person, but I understand that logic. What I do mind is people telling me, like you just told me, Rich. I know you're joking, but who can tell that she has no negatives. Like, oh no, she's like, just she is the next logical step into this great left project that I can't really explain to you. I can't detail this great left project, but I know it exists, and I know that she's the next logical step. But my question would be, okay, but I mean, I'm sorry, no, I tweeted this to Sean King, and I know I'm going on a bit of a rant here, because Sean King, brought up his little doomsday clock, and he was like, oh, it's 2 days until, like, Trump might be elected and the world ends. And I tweeted to Sean King, in 140 characters or less, when did the left become the party of reactionary crisis management? When did the left stop doing big projects? When did we stop building, roads that crisscross over America? Although, of course, those roads were built on the roads already established by Native American populations prior to, but whatever. When did we stop doing that and start only reacting to the right? Like when did the left become not its own? When did the left stop defining itself and started letting itself be defined by whatever the right is not? Because say what you want about the Republican Party, but they have plans. They're bad plans. I mean, like, they're awful for the majority of Americans, but they have them. Like, they have them, and they're proactive. The left uses the right as a shield to disguise their own really, really, really bad policies, man. Like, it's like, it's gross. I mean, I can't even.
No, Bernie
like
Sanders
very broad strokes.
captured it really well. Basically, he said it before, but he also said it while he was campaigning. That basically that the right, the Republican Party, is a fictional of the media and the Democrats, and for the reasons that you list, that it allows them to use them as a shield, as representing everything that Republicans aren't, when it comes to the positives that they lack, and lacking the negatives that they have. Although we've seen with this election and previously that Democrats have a lot of the same cons that we find with Republicans, whether down south with the transgender bill, bathroom bill, or
of
whatever.
course.
Go ahead.
Of course they do, and we're gonna bring in our guests in.
Yeah.
But do you know why the left, the Democratic establishment and the Republican establishment have some of the exact same qualities? Because they're the exact same people. They are literally the exact same people. And I don't mean they're the exact same people like they're clones of each other, but they have they went to the same schools, they're in the same socioeconomic classes, they belong to the same clubs, they're the same color, they have the same religion. They are basically the same except for a few differences. And so if you ask two people who share very minor differences about their opinion on certain things, they'll have the same opinion. Of course, rich people, regardless of whether they belong to Democratic or Republican Party, view poverty as a very, very low priority, because that's not their experience. It simply is not. And we need to move past this obsession with ideology that America has. Americans have an obsession with ideology. They think that it is the main defining feature of who we are, and they tend to deny experience. They think there's such a huge difference between poor Muslim countries and poor Christian countries in any real fundamental way, when ultimately it's no. Like, what the main feature there is class. Class is the defining feature here. But let's move on.
All right. No, I think you bring up some important points, but we do have a guest joining us.
I'm still important points.
It's Nick, who is a former Bernie delegate and now a Green Party activist, if the information we're getting is correct. So, Nick, go ahead and say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself. If you're prepared, if you're ready there.
Sure. Hey, so I'm Nick Wadianathan. I was a Washington National Bernie Sanders delegate for CD9. And I basically went to the Democratic National Convention, and I witnessed in person that the Democratic Party is a sham of democracy. They say, we're having this convention, we're bringing delegates here to work on policy, to talk about the future of the party, and the mics were off in the stands. They turned the lights out on us when we protested that they were kind of beating the drums of war and promoting war. And Washington and Colorado and California and these states said, no more war. We told them to stop the TPP. And throughout the entire process, we went there hoping, sure, we had a lower number of total delegate count, but maybe the fact that a good 46% of the Democratic Party was on board with the Bernie Sanders message meant that we could negotiate about things like the vice presidential pick, for example. And we were told to fuck ourselves. I mean, essentially, there was no real set of concessions that came out of that convention. And it really kind of solidified to me the point that ultimately there was a planned coronation. And even in a planned coronation, you would expect some kind of conciliatory olive branch sent out to progressives. And to me, I just saw over and over that the Democratic Party is actually more than fine with alienating progressives and bringing in Negroponte, bringing in Henry Kissinger, bringing in, the neoconservatives. And that is just crazy to me. I mean, that's basically saying we're going to say we're progressives. We're going to do the most dubious kind of double think possible, double speak possible, that we will sell you the word progressive while promoting policies that bomb brown people in the Middle East, that create a horrible trade agreement that screws the American workers. And I read the book Listen Liberal by Thomas Frank, which to your earlier speaker's point, kind of talks about the progression of the Democratic Party through this chain. And I can't believe that even after the convention, we have the Dakota Access Pipeline situation going on right now. And Barack Obama's like, we're going to let it play out. And Hillary Clinton's like, well, it's a stressful situation. I think we need to listen to both sides. It's crazy. I think the only ethical and moral thing that you can do at this point is Dem exit. And is to say, listen, we've had thought leaders. We had Michelle Alexander in Why the Clintons Don't Deserve the Black Vote, calling for building a new third party. We had Robert Reich in his book, Saving Capitalism, saying, maybe it's time for a new third party. We have these people who keep saying we need to build something new, but there's still this culture of fear. There's still this culture of it's too hard. Maybe we can hijack the Democrats and kind of rebuild it from within. But from what I'm seeing, I've never seen this level of collusion in media, working with a campaign, in kind of all these tendrils of interconnection, all elevating a candidate. To me, that's really scary. I mean, that's the type of Big Brother 1984 collusion, kind of Ministry of Truth thought control, that when the media is promoting a message for a candidate and the candidate's got tendrils in foreign governments and within the government itself, the FBI is making suspect decisions based on kind of this web of connections. That's really not what you would expect from a free democracy. That's the kind of thing that you would expect to hear happening in a third world dictatorship. That's the kind of thing that we, historically have looked at other countries and said, haha, that's you, but that's not America.
I think that's one of the things that's been that stood out to me as one of the more problematic things themes that have arisen out of this election is, for me, is especially on the left, the lack of concern and urgency of concern about what's transpiring, whether it's the media colluding with the DNC or whether it's how campaign finance is being run by either party, the exposure of how their foundations or their charities are not being used for the purposes that were presumed or that are generally presumed. But then we find out, well, that's just how charities are run, and all they're doing is exposing that, yes, this is how we do this is what happens at charities, other than some of the particularly quality ones. And so, go ahead, get in there, Brandon.
No, I agree, but I mean that's what we've heard from a lot of people. You bring up the point that people seem unconcerned. It's like, yeah, they seem unconcerned, but a lot of people just say, well, that's just that's just politics. That's just how
Right.
politics works.
Right.
That's been a lot of people's excuse. And it comes down to this fundamental question about what the media has been doing to the American populace for the past, I don't know why, since Bill Clinton got rid of the communication law that allowed the media establishment to be run by 6 companies, and that media has been gaslighting everybody. The media has been controlled by a very small number of rich people, and it's been employing a very small number of not political elite, but of elite minority, rather, the pundit class, we'll call them now. And they simply have different concerns than everyone else. And so they are unable to think outside of their bubble. They don't have the same stressors that that the rest of us have. And they're just their friends. I would say the most troubling thing to me about the revelation of the Podesta leaks was how casual everything was. Like, I would have preferred if I saw emails with Podesta literally threatening people, like Nixon-esque Watergate scandal levels of threatening and blackmail, and I have your daughter. You're gonna write this article about Hillary Clinton, or else you'll never see your daughter again. Mwah, ha 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 ha. But what it was, it didn't even seem like a conspiracy. It just seemed like a bunch of friends getting together to do something. Like, it seemed like
Sorry, that's a key point, because we've seen there were a couple of articles that came out of Politico, I think a few weeks back. Basically, the Obama administration and liberals understand now that the media comes to them and asks for stories, right? And so there used to be a different relationship between reporters and the government, that the media would be the fourth estate. It would challenge the government. It would do its own independent research, and it would come and ask a politician very hard pointed questions like, hey, what are you doing here? And now we have a class of journalism that basically is embedded, just like we embedded reporters in Iraq so that the New York Times could sell the Iraq war. Now we're embedding reporters in these campaigns so that they can sell these campaigns. It's madness. It's exactly the opposite of what the fourth estate is supposed to do.
I mean, it brings up a fundamental question about access journalism and too many cooks spoiling the pot. And even if you're talking about what I would call the new left media, the media establishment that came about with the revolution of the internet age. So your Salons, your Slates, your Daily Beasts, your Politicos, your HuffPos, all of these places that we once thought prior to this election were these great liberal bastions, and oh my God, they're going to write the real articles, and even your Jezebels or whatever, the places that the right laughs at for being too liberal and fluffy. It's like, when you have such a proliferation of sort of outlets, you can only afford to be so hard hitting. You can only afford to be so truthful, or else you're gonna get boxed out. And that doesn't even address the issues that are caused by the media establishment not only being run by the wealthy elite, but being populated by the wealthy elite at the level where most of your reporters are going to be, for lack of a better word, even on the left, upper middle class white people. That's just what the majority of reporters and bloggers and journalists are. And so they only ask questions from the perspective of upper middle class white people. And so you have a lot of people are sort of treating HuffPo or like these op-ed writers as though they're corrupt. But it's like, no, they're just a very, very small slice of America. Like, they're a very, very small slice of the American populace who has a very, very specific opinion and very, very specific experience. So it becomes very hard to get a diverse series of opinions out into the populace, because we don't have a diverse media. We just don't.
I want to challenge that opinion. I want to challenge it because I see where you're coming from, and I think that's a really valid point, because it's been made by others. Thomas Frank kind of talks about the same pundit class. I'm just going to suggest that there's another element at play, and it's a moral and ethical failure of American culture. Listen, I'm a software engineer. I make over 100K. My life's pretty comfortable. If I were representing solely the interests of my class, I would be very much in the state that, well, whatever, things are good, trade's all right. I'm getting better and better stuff. It's all okay. I grew up poor, so there is obviously a contextual thing that I understand kind of where I am versus where I was, and I have that background. But I think that there's also a level of empathy. There's just a level of honor. There's a level of ability, to be, as a reporter, what is my field supposed to be about? And maybe that's the fundamental difference. The idea that, the news, before being a culpability agent and now it's an entertainment agent, that ultimately changes priorities. That changes, if these people are You can be from a different socioeconomic class, but if you have a focus on, spreading sunlight where things are dark, whether you're rich, whether you're poor, Bernie Sanders, he makes, he got a $650,000 winter home-ish, vacation home. That's relatively small for a politician, but it's more than I can afford for a house. I mean, there are people who can work even at the higher classes. And Elon Musk, for example, is somebody who I think is doing excellent work in trying to promote electric cars, in trying to promote alternative energy sources. I think there's just a missing kind of element of, honor, duty. I don't know. I mean, these are concepts that the left struggles to talk about. But you get what I'm saying here?
I do get what you're saying, and I'm going to address the point that you just made. I'm going to bring a Darren because he's feel like being brought in. And yes, I agree with you 100%. America lacks. Sorry, Darren has a little bit of feedback there. Sorry. Okay. Give me one second.
Gonna either need headphones
America, I got it. America struggles with the fundamental question of empathy, not just in the media class or the pundit class or any other sort of person who has a platform, whether it be politician or MSNBC host, but in general citizenry. And so the only reason the pundit class or journalist class can get away with having this lack of empathy is because it's absent in everyone else. We have a fundamental lack of, and the lack of empathy comes from a fundamental lack of integration in our society. Whether we're talking about integration in terms of economic integration in terms of racial integration, immigration in terms of religious integration, we live in a segregated society, which has only gotten more segregated since the 60s. All of the big movements that went on during the 60s and 70s have been rolled back slowly over time. Best example, of course, is the gutting of the Voting Rights Act. And when we talk about a lack of empathy that is defining the problems of our time, it's like, absolutely. And of course, we should, the U's, or rather, I guess you grew up poor, but the Bernie Sanders is, well, when I say that, I always feel like I'm saying Precious is like, Gollum, but they should not be the exception. But I understand why they are. And from my perspective, what I'm saying is that, listen, I can't blame people for not overcoming the odds. That's unfair of me. So all I can do is change those odds. All I can do is change the structures that exist and tackle structures that prevent empathy from forming. And right now, what is preventing empathy from forming is our unintegrated society. So I can't just point to Matthew Iglesias or Chris Hayes and say, well, he's the problem because he lacks empathy for the working poor, and so he can't understand why someone like Susan Sarandon, who is not working poor, can support someone like Bernie Sanders. All I can say is, okay, I understand why Chris Hayes does not understand what Bernie Sanders is about. I understand why he can't think out of his own socioeconomic class. So what we need to do is we need to change the material conditions that people are growing up in so they can think that. That's the whole purpose of education. That's the whole purpose of a diverse society, that we are forced to come in contact with people who are different from us due to a variety of identities, and simply gain empathy through exposure.
I think that's an excellent point, and it's something we've touched on before about the empathy through exposure. And I think one of the points that you bring up that we kind of just touched on, both of you guys, but I found very valuable, is just that a lot of the times for people that were either voting for Jill Stein or choosing not to vote for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, a lot of the times, you just hate Hillary, you just hate her, you're just a hater, hate. And a lot of that, and a lot of people say things like, they're evil, they're corrupt. And I think part of what Brandon and Nick are touching on is that there's both a social and a larger contextual issue, that people arrive at these conclusions or this behavior not necessarily because there's some sort of evil, devil pulling their strings, or that they're lacking the physical capacity for empathy, but often just because of it's naturally arises out of the circumstances and their innate personalities combined with that. And so that I view people aren't evil.
I'm gonna give it up. I'm gonna give it up. Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna say something. Give it up. I'm gonna give it up to say this. I don't hate Hillary Clinton as much as I think other people do. Or at least I don't hate her as much as I hate the neoliberal apologists. I don't hate her as much as I hate the people who are going through mental gymnastics to justify her ascendancy to power. If you can just be honest with everything, then we're cool. But it's the people out there who are coming up with these sort of BS sophistic. So whatever BS. Yeah, I don't know what the adjective is. And so, what you call it? arguments for why she is not a neoliberal or why neoliberalism is okay all of a sudden because Hillary Clinton's doing. Those are the people, like to quote Nicholas Nolan, the Sister Soldier fans who are voting for Clinton and are doing it because they view Clinton at, like, they've somehow argued themselves to see Clinton in sort of parallel with Sister Soldier's viewpoints, are the ones that I find incredibly problematic, because if you can justify that, you can justify anything. And like it's like, but yeah, like I said before, people are welcoming neoliberalism and neoconservatism with open arms, and they always have.
They're out here campaighning for it, trying to convince the folks that aren't on board to get on board. With that, I do want to get a dare in here.
I want to,
yeah. So
and
I
then we'll
want
go to
to
Nick.
pick up on that exact topic that Brandon was just mentioning about his issue being with the people that are somehow doing these mental gymnastics. And I would posit that you would have to hate every single person who has tended to vote Democrat since the 1970s. Because here's why. So I had a conversation recently with a professor of mine, and she mentioned that she wondered if there's going to be a split inside of the Democratic Party because it's moved so far to encompass so many different people. And I apologize if my mic is garbage, but I'm using Bluetooth headset, and that's the only way I can get you without feedback. But the conversation went on. She's afraid that there's going to be, or was worried about that there's going to be a split. I argue that split happened in the 70s. I argue that split happened when the no war Democrats were pushed out of the party. I argue that split happened when the Democrats started losing to Republicans in national and presidential races based on things like law and order and social security, that safety net kind of thing. I argue that schism happened in 1992 officially when Bill Clinton became president, because Bill Clinton did not run as a Democrat. Bill Clinton ran as a Republican, period. I don't care how you think about it. He's a very charismatic Republican, so we've seen that schism. So you can't go, I mean, to be quite honest with you, this is the logical next step. It's Hillary Clinton. This is the logical progression of the Democratic Party up until this point.
So I want to go back.
I want to let you in here, but I just wanted topically just to mention this: like Bill Clinton also opened his campaign with the slogan "Make America Great Again." Just to show you how cyclical that is.
Has anyone ever considered that I'm tired of America being great? Maybe I don't want America to be great.
All right, Nick, go ahead and get into here.
Brandon, I think you made an interesting point, and this goes back to why people have been so focused on this presidential election. I think that the president acts as a weather vane for the country, an ideological weather vane, a kind of a moral compass for the country. And you see the entire mood of a country shift with the president. You had George Bush as president for 8 years, where not only was gay marriage outlawed, but they were looking for a constitutional amendment, and they were talking about civil unions being good enough, separate but equal. And then you get Barack Obama, and it's like, oh, well, now let's legalize gay marriage. So the president is an important role because it serves as kind of a barometer of where the popular consensus is. My concern, which goes back to Adair's point and to your point, is that these neoliberals who are doing these mental gymnastics are really part of this fringe movement that became the mainstream that basically commandeered the Democratic Party, which Paul Starr wrote about very nicely in the American Prospect in an article that I highly recommend people look up called The Fanatics of the Center, where these people have convinced themselves and each other that centrism is a value, a moral and ethical value in and of itself. That when your opponent says, I want to cut off your arm, you say, well, how about just a finger? Maybe a couple fingers. And so we've seen the Republicans, Newt Gingrich had this line on Sean Hannity where Hannity asked him, so, in the election in 2012, when are you going to go back to the center? And Newt said, I don't think you go to the center. I think you bring the center to you. And that's the entire policy the right has been following for the last 20, 30 years. And the Democrats have been complicit in going along with that by saying, oh, well, you want to quibble about war? Fine, we'll send war in Iraq. And I think that what's truly harmful about this election is exactly what Brandon's talking about. These neoliberal gymnastics where it's all about, well, I have to be reasonable. I have to be a centrist. I have to give them, an inch. I have to, find a way to make it all make sense for me so that I can support the TPP. I can think about privatizing Social Security. These types of things is just endemic. It's problematic of a social issue. And I look at leaders like Dr. Maria Santos Gorostieta, a leader that not a lot of people know about. She was actually killed in Mexico. She was a mayor who stood up against the corruption of the drug cartels. Was a very smart, very beautiful woman who just knew that she was a target, and she refused to back down. And this type of leadership inspired her community, and it inspired a culture that ultimately revolted against these drug overlords and pushed them out. And what we're seeing, I took Bernie Sanders' equivocation at the convention pretty hard, because I thought that he would be, he said he was going to go with the will of the Democratic Party. I really hope that he would go through the process and come to realize that there are certain lines you just cannot yield to. And when you yield, it is a cultural contagion. And I think that liberals and Democrats have just yielded for so long on the social safety net, talking about, we have to save Social Security by raising the Social Security age. Excuse me? How about we just raise the top end and kill the cap? There are always other arguments that can actually push it back to FDR style New Deal Democratic, social democracy. And instead, it's just been a continual series of yielding. And that's why I think we talk about this presidential election and we talk about these social issues, and what I want to kind of get people programmed about, why I'm passionate about Jill Stein now is because I think we need to start cultivating leaders who don't quibble, who say, no, it's not optional for us to have single payer healthcare. It's not optional for us to have education. It's we're going to fight for these things without backing down. And I think that's what causes things to change.
You're absolutely right. And I mean, what you're talking
getting here, Brandon, but I just wanted to mention that we are going to get some updates on the polls coming up soon. So, but go ahead and continue.
Absolutely. I mean, what Nick is describing is so important. This idea, like, it's a logical fallacy. It's called the appeal to moderation, or the appeal to the center. The idea that if you pick the middle point between two ideas, that middle point must somehow be the right. It's what we're taught when we're children. We're taught that, there's one story. I mean, there's your story and there's his story, and somewhere in the middle, there's the truth. But here's the thing: eventually, you have to grow up. Eventually, you have to realize that reckless centrism does not make you the adult in the room. And we've seen a lot of that during this election. We've seen a lot of reckless centrism, a lot of reckless neutrality, and a lot of people who are trying to disguise their cowardice and their nihilism about the democratic process, or rather the possibility for change, as somehow the adult position. We've seen a lot of people treat Hillary Clinton as though she is the adult choice. Like, oh no, Bernie Sanders is the pie in the sky, like the childish imagination. So is Jill Stein choice. Like, Hillary Clinton, she's the pragmatic choice. Like, when really it's not pragmatism, it's cowardice. It's people who are too afraid to do anything. They would, it's the whole, the devil is better than when you don't. Like, they are so afraid of change, or the possibility that the status quo might end, that they succumb to this nihilism or nihilism or cowardice, but they refuse to describe it as that. So instead, they adopt this air of, I'm the adult, and they try to explain their logic of how they came to this adult decision, when really at the end of the day, it comes down to, well, you're a coward. Like you are afraid of Trump. You are afraid of what Trump represents. But ultimately, and this goes down to what Nick said earlier, you refuse to challenge that frame. You refuse, and we saw a lot in the debate, the refusal to challenge the conservative frame by the Democrats about something like Social Security, about any of these Social Security programs. The refusal to say, you know what? No, that's incorrect. If you just, raise the cap, if you just, first of all, Social Security is solvent for decades. That's the first thing. And if you just, raise the cap, it's solvent indefinitely. Like, the refusal to just say these things because either they think America's too stupid, or that's been the narrative for so long. They no longer know how to untangle it. They no longer know how to untangle the conservative framing of these things without coming across as being, disingenuous or liars or whatever. Maybe they don't want to. Maybe they just become comfortable with this two-party duopoly, and any way they can keep it going, they're willing to keep it going.
I think there's a variety of people that fall in a variety of segments. A lot of people can calculate and realize, well, if it works out this way, I'll be in a better position. And if I align myself with the right folks, I mean, this is speaking more towards people in the media and various other areas, that, if I show positive feelings towards this person that's going to be in power, things are going to be better for me in the future. And it's just a simple, practical, it's as simple as that. And the things about, like, making lives better for other people, they think that the best way to improve other people's lives is to have them have more money so that they can distribute it to the causes and purposes that they see more fit.
It's some of that. I mean, it's some of that, but also we gotta be very careful. And I keep hate to bring up about the voices that we elevate. We elevate a lot of these voices because they do not challenge the status quo. It's not people who are out there necessarily scheming to get access, but people who just who come from a position where their desires and their experiences do not challenge the prime narrative. They do not challenge the hegemonic notion about what society is designed for. Like that's the ultimate. That's another lesson we can take away. Like, whose voices are we elevating in the media, and how do they not only reaffirm the framing of all these questions?
And that's a great point, and that's why I think that we need to, as progressives, start being very demanding on whether it's elevating alternate news sources, places like Democracy Now, even challenging up and coming sources like the Young Turks, and start asking, where are the Noam Chomskys? Where are the Chris Hedges? Where are the people that have been out and proud critiquing this entire system of oppression for decades? And how can we get their voices? Why is Ralph Nader disappeared? Why is Jill Stein, only relevant during election time? I think we need to start cultivating a group of, people who are promoting these progressive values.
If
I don't know
I
if
can
it's
come
about
in for a second.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, Nick. Other Nick, please come in.
I want to first say I'm happy to be here with the Project Sanity guys. You guys are very, 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 very aligned with me. I'm happy. But the first thing I want to say is we make it seem as though we individually, as a society, elevate people in the news media, so to speak. I don't believe that that's always the case. I think, particularly when you're talking about the corporate media, those people are elevated by a select few number of people, or the institution itself will elevate particular voices or a particular narrative. And like for most people, that's just what they're going to be fed. Now, I mean, when you talk about independent media, that's totally different. But as you can see, as the independent media becomes larger and more popular, it slowly starts to transition and kind of resemble the corporate media in a sense. And I think if you look at the Young Turks, their main show, that's kind of clear. If you watch them from when they were smaller to where they are now, it's a clear difference in perspective.
Oh no, I agree, and I think what you just said, Nick, really, it's another part of the myth of the meritocracy, that the people in the media are there because they have some kind of unique insight or opinion that deserves to be shared with the public, when a lot of times the people in the media are there because they serve as a better mouthpiece for the status quo. Not necessarily because they have something unique or interesting to say, but because they're like Anderson Cooper. They're Vanderbilt. They put a pretty face on the same neoliberal policies, or like Rachel Maddow, because she had one foot in the minority door and one foot in the corporate cronyism door. So so we got to be careful about how we sort of understand the mainstream media's, the mouthpieces that exist in the mainstream media and why they are there. It's not because they're good at their job. I think God knows it's not because Don Lemon was good at his job, or Chris Matthews is good at his job, or Chris Hayes is good at his job, or Scarborough is good at their job. It's because they're just mouthpieces for the status quo. And when it comes down to independent media, you see it like that. Like that's how you create. That's how you can. Sorry, rather, you can never really have a truly mainstream progressive news outlet, because that just won't do very well. I think if you really want to make money and sort of be on the left, you have to create these narratives and these sort of talking heads that, they challenge the status quo a little bit. They want gay marriage. They want Black people to be not shot in the streets, kind of, but they don't challenge it too much. They don't challenge the whole frame. They just challenge the excesses of the system. That's what I'm trying to say. We have a liberal media that never challenges the system, simply the excesses of that system. It doesn't challenge the sort of the structures of racism, just the fact that police brutality exists in its most overt form.
No, that's an excellent point. Sorry, I've just been looking around in the back end. We also have another guest joining us. I'm guessing the name I'm seeing isn't the name.
I think we have a full house tonight. We have
Yes.
a full 10. We have a full 10 people in this hangout.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna try to keep the conversation moving and give everybody an opportunity to speak. And so, get Adair, if you wanted to intro the guest, possibly. Is that
Wait, I don't know if this is one of my guests. Hold on, guys. Let me check my phone. Again, sorry, everyone. I'm on my phone trying to do this.
gotcha?
So.
All right.
I have a question. I have a question for everybody. I mean, before we do updates, who was your favorite Republican primary candidate, and why do you wish it was them now instead of Trump?
Do we really have to pick?
Yeah,
Do we actually have to
you really have to pick.
Oh,
It doesn't have to be because they were more leftist. It can be just because you like something about them. They were funnier. Let's go with Richard first.
Possible.
I don't know, but I'm looking at these Florida numbers, and right now they're within a percentage point with 78% in, with Clinton just ahead by about 60,000 votes, a little less, a little
That's
over
not an
50,000
answer.
votes.
That's not an answer.
I
I think that's more important than who our favorite Republican is, Brandon. Like let's real quick. Let's actually focus on the numbers here instead of the Republicans that we like to do.
Sorry, folks, having some technical difficulties. We're getting a bunch of guests in the rooms here, and my computer's slowing down a little bit. I'm going to try to get back online here as soon as I can.
if it were Clinton versus Cruz, we would. This would be I'm with her. Project I'm with her.
Damn,
Everyone-
son. Well, that's what we're looking at in 2020.
I would no, because at that point it's just like I saw it coming, and I have 4 years to prepare myself for that.
All right.
But no, Cruz is insane. Cruz is obviously a sociopath, and I would know because I can see it. I can see a little bit of me in his eyes.
Well, not only
Like,
does he want to bend
You
the
can see a lot of bit of you in his eyes.
like not
But
only does he
I'm-
want to
but I'm
bend the
not really-
establishment to his will, and his will being really twisted, but he also knows how to do it.
It's like okay, so
He hasn't done anything.
guys, real
that
quick,
we
can
wanted
I
to do with
interject?
him. Yeah, go ahead.
Can I interject? Majid, are you around? I had a guest who said he got in. Majid, if you're here, let me know.
he's not. But
No,
anyway,
I think that's Diana. I think.
Diana.
Oh, it is Majid. Okay, welcome. He is another former delegate. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself to the guys before we get back on live. I just wanted to make sure everyone got to know who he was real quick.
No, I didn't introduce myself. I just jump in. I have no idea. This is the first time using this app.
Yes, so just tell everybody about who you are, Majid, your background, why, pretty much, like, I mean, your background is way, I think, more impressive than mine is by every stretch of the imagination, but.
No. I'm just a basic, normal, a person who wants to live in the, in the society, feels like the American dream. Well, my name is Majid. I'm actually from Iraq, originally from Iraq. I left Iraq in 1991. I spent almost nearly 5 years in prison just because involved in the political. And I came here and I become a national delegate. This is my third time, and I'm going for Jill. And I think she is much better, than the other two.
Mhm.
So that's a little bit of me.
Yeah, we'll have you come on, and so you'll have to repeat that a little bit, but definitely want to get you
So
introduced
Rich,
and
I'm ready
involved
to-
in the
I'm-
conversation.
You're all going out. We're hearing all
You
that.
guys all talking
Oh,
one
you guys,
time.
okay, everything's going out, sweet.
Okay.
But okay, so we're going back out. I want to bring the conversation back to Virginia and the ramifications of what happens if Trump wins Virginia and manages to pull out Florida, which I think is going to end up being the case.
I think he's gonna win Virginia. By the way, I looked in the last 5 minutes ago. He's way ahead.
Oh man, he just got back ahead in Florida by 740 votes.
Yep.
Like it's close in Florida. It's close.
I'm going to call it. I think Trump wins Florida, Ohio, and Virginia, but I think he loses Michigan.
Probably so. I think so.
this is bringing out the worst in me, man.
So here is the question, and I'm kind of nervous. I was watching the CNN news and NBC, and I was kind of get nervous a little bit. If Trump actually win the election, how are you guys gonna feel about that? I mean, are you gonna get mad? I mean, either way, I'm gonna get sad if Trump win or Hillary. But how about you guys? What's your perspective?
My told you so bone is pretty strong, so it's gonna be hard to suppress that.
Is that what you call it? Your told you so bone?
This wouldn't even be close with Bernie Sanders, right? Like that's just that's the told you so
Right?
bone from my perspective.
Yeah.
I think that we have to be ready to fight both of these candidates. We know that the Democrats are likely to retake the Senate, so the idea of Trump being mein Führer, without a complete breakdown of society, it's still, we've been talking about president obstructionism from Congress when it comes to Obama. There's no reason why the Democrats, unless they do the whole moderate rollover thing that we were talking about earlier, can't just stop at the Senate level and in the other levels the worst of what Trump could do. And I think that what's interesting to me is that it turns into a real opportunity in 2020 to come back and say, okay, we got to go with Tulsi. We got to go with Elizabeth Warren if she wants to actually run this time. We got to come back strong. So there's an opportunity there. I do think it's scary as hell. And I think that there's a lot of stoking of the flames because the president is a weather vane and a barometer that you really have to worry about the rise of alt-right thought and what that can entail. But I think that ultimately it needs to turn. We have to be prepared to fight either way.
I don't think that the Democrats, if we've learned anything from this primary, I don't think that even with a Trump win, the Democrats are prepared to pack up the neoliberalism. I think that they will double down next time because they will do what once Trump ruins everything, people will actually be glad to take whatever they get. So I don't know how deep down the rabbit hole I don't know who they're going to bring up in 2020 because it won't be Clinton again. But if Trump wins, I wouldn't expect them to go, full progressive. I would expect them to, double down neoliberalism. They go, see, fascism. Look what happened. I think we can all agree though that we are incapable of holding Clinton's feet to the fire in any meaningful way.
Well, I want to throw this wrench in things. What if we throw the wrench in that Republicans win the Senate? They've already let's just say Republicans keep the majority in the Senate. Let's say that this Trump wave goes on, the Republicans ride that, or even worse, let's say Dems win the Senate, but something happens to Trump. And we have President Mike Pence. I think that's the real fear here for a lot of people, and I think that's where the Democrats, if you're going to fearmonger the right person, fearmonger the governor who made it illegal for gay couples to apply for a marriage license. Fear the governor who's done the crap that Trump is talking about. That's scary to me, is that Pence might actually end up as president if something happens to Trump. He's going on trial. I mean,
but we've had this conversation before. Look how awful Tim Kaine is.
Right.
And
Trump has already said that he wants his vice president to make all his policy, right? So a Trump presidency is a Pence presidency because Trump basically wants to be the party boy in chief, right? Like he wants to show up at the convention or at the parties. He wants to, give vapid speeches. But in terms of policy, we're really looking at his cabinet and who he puts around him. And I think he's going to delegate most of his responsibilities of actual ruling to vice president. That's been his plan all along.
Here's my prediction. I think Clinton wins. And I think in 2020, the Republican Party uses the whole Trump thing that occurred as their come to God moment, their rhetorical come to God moment. Like, oh, can you believe how far we fell? And we've come to our senses that we're going to get back to real conservatism. And that's why we elected Ted Cruz to be our delegate. Who am I pointing to?
Now I think that's
because Ted Cruz, despite being literally a sociopath and a religious zealot, he can pretend to be normal. And
and more than that, the Democrats
smart.
would actively support this. The Democrats, we've seen the Pied Piper things in the WikiLeaks that they were like, please give us Ted Cruz, give us Donald Trump, maybe give us Ben Carson. The Democrats would be 100% all in. They would have their media, insipid Hydra do everything it could to just pump up Cruz because Cruz is who they want to fight, right? Like Cruz is another scary. So all it does is just, more validation for Clinton. So what's scariest to me about this whole cycle is how much we're seeing the Republicrats as something that's not just a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, but how it all kind of plays in to just, the neoconservatives drift toward the Democrats. Pied Piper candidate comes up. They've got the next Pied Piper candidate ready to go. I mean, that's to me the scariest thing about a Clinton win and having such a predictable chain here is that it's very clear how they want the Republicans to play. And it's not so clear that the Republicans have any kind of counter strategy. To me, the Republicans need to start looking at leaders
quickly there before you get in here. I just wanted to say is that we talked earlier about how the false idea that the truth must be somewhere in the center kind of idea. And I think Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, as you mentioned, Ben Carson, having them be the other side puts the center much closer to that neoliberal or the goals that they're after. Is if you put the right so far out there, then the center is right where you want it to be. And so go ahead and get in there.
So I want to throw this wrinkle in there. This is something that a lot of people haven't been talking about, but something that 538 has actually started modeling was the influence of the number of people that vote third party. I think our best case scenario here, regardless of who wins president, is that both Jill Stein and Gary Johnson poll 5%. Ideally, Jill Stein. That's who I cast my ballot for here in Washington State. I voted Stein Baraka because I couldn't stomach anybody else. And I actually really do like their policies. But I think that throws a wrench in things. I think Green Party hitting 5% nationally throws such a wrench in 2018 even. In the midterm elections, when you start seeing Green Party senators, Green Party representatives, you start seeing state houses turn more and more green, and then you start seeing more of an implementation of a parliamentary style system. Because there's no way that neoliberalism could recover if we manage to hit a 5% threshold of an actual third party.
And I
Well,
think
wait a
there's a
minute.
real opportunity here that there's such a big tent on both sides of the parties in terms of Democrats and Republicans, where you've got the Rand Paul, Ron Paul Republicans that are just dying for a viable option to get the fuck out of the Republican Party, right? So if the Libertarians could actually start looking like a real party, that would cut their power base in half, which then the Greens start looking like a real party, cuts the Democratic power base in half. Suddenly you've got something that looks closer to democracy again, where it's a lot less, these are the only two options. I think that we need, one of the things that I'm promoting is that we don't need a three-party. We don't need third parties. We need a four-party system. We need to give both sides, people who are unhappy with the most unpopular candidates in American history on both sides, they both need a place to go. And when you look at the debates that on PBS, Tavis Smiley had debates with Jill Stein and Gary Johnson. Listen, I think libertarians are full of it, and I think that the hyper-capitalism is social Darwinism. Like, I have a lot of ideological objections to libertarians. That was a very reasonable debate, and if you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend that people go just watch the half-hour snippets. Both sides were very reasonable people, and I think that there's a lot of common ground that they can work on in terms of ending the surveillance state, getting marijuana off of Schedule 1. There's a lot of overlap there that really, if it were possible for these people who are in prison on both sides, the prison of the Democrats and the prison of the Republicans, to break out and actually have viable alternate parties, this would be a huge thing for 2018, 2020. It changes the game. And so I think that when you look at Maine's RCV5, that might be one of the most important actual elections going on here in 2016. If RCV5 passes and ranked choice voting, we have a template of how to apply that in Maine. We have to start looking at applying that kind of in multiple places. We do it in Washington and Arizona at the same time. We do it in a place like Oregon and in a place like, I don't know, Virginia, that kind of goes back and forth. Once you start getting ranked choice voting and you start creating the style that, I want the Green Party to be successful. I also kind of want the Libertarian Party to be successful, just because I know that it's going to be very hard to get all my Republican brothers and sisters who disagree with me on religion and everything else to come all the way green. But if they have a place to go, we can actually have real competition. And I think that's what we've seen that's gone so wrong in this late stage capitalistic system is we're so oligopolistic, we're so monopolistic that the competition is gone, right? It's just the cadres, the cabals are able to kind of mutually reinforce each other and set up Pied Piper candidates. When we get to real political competition, I think that's where we can start seeing fundamental innovative change in the system.
Let me say
Nick, your
something on
turn.
that.
Yeah.
Let me say something on that. You said 2018. I'm gonna be real with you. I think expecting to see big movements by 2018 is a little slim. The Green Party has to overcome almost like a toxic brand recognition at this point, I think, and that's only gonna probably be overcome when maybe our generation is older. So we might be looking like maybe a decade or so of being out in the wilderness before we really start to see a lot of motion start happening, even on the electoral front. Like right now, it's just they had a small surge, but we saw that the media's power over the largely I want to say uninformed, but I hate to use that word because it's insulting and condescending in some respects. But the people who aren't necessarily paying attention to anything other than characterizations of people, or oh, she said this, or she sounds kooky, or I don't know if I know about that. Like the power that the mainstream media has over those people, and then the independent media that's supposed to be an alternative to that, still reinforcing the two-party system as well and shitting on Green Party candidates, also will catch the people who consider themselves pragmatists or more reasoned, or the people who are so arrogant that they just think that they're just smarter than everybody else and they have some kind of better understanding. That propaganda is probably going to catch them too. So what you're really looking at is a very small number of people who are even really just open to supporting the outside candidates. And the question I would ask to you then is, how much of the news really is, like I said before, making the news versus giving the people the news that they want? Because an excuse for the mainstream media tending to cover Trump and promote the Pied Piper candidates seems to be that it was good for their ratings, but I'm not necessarily sold on that explanation. I believe that, making news is a big deal in America. So that's possibly what happened. They made Trump news as opposed to him just being news and just covering him just because.
Okay. So I want to actually take on some of what you said, because you made really valid points. But the first one is you're saying that, right, you think that we won't see radical change until, electoral change really until for about another decade or so. I agree with you to an extent. I don't think we'll see real electoral change in a lot of states, but I do think that we have the opportunity with equal ballot access, right? All throughout the U.S., I think that's when you start seeing some levels of change. I think that's when you start seeing some pockets of California turn green as opposed to blue. I think that's when you see Washington State. Here we have a lot of people that are actively getting involved with progressive identities, regardless of whatever their political affiliation might be. Here in Thurston County, we have the Thurston County Progressives. It's a group of folks that meet every month to talk about getting progressive actions passed, Dems, Green Party folks, independents, whomever. So I think that's the first step. I don't think you're going to see this radical shift all at once, but I do think you start seeing a congressperson or two that has that G next to their name. I think that's what you're going to see in 2 years if we get equal ballot access now. But the main crux that I think we really should be talking about is independent media. We know what the mainstream news is going to do. They're going to do what makes them money. They're going to do, as the WWE says, what's best for business, period. It's a real life soap opera. That's what they do. It's our job here at Project Sanity. It's our job at Progressive Army. It's our job at RT News. It's our job here. These folks, we're the ones that actually have to go and start doing unbiased coverage. I think we started to see that shift. I think the more we get out, the more we actually do this work, the greater audience we can reach, the better off we all are. And that's why we've worked here at Project Sanity so close with the Stein-Baraka campaign. That's why I interviewed Jill Stein in Philadelphia. That's why I still try to reach out to David Cobb and to the Green Party, into that campaign and say, hey, can we work with you guys? Let's get some of this out there, because if the mainstream media isn't going to take you seriously, we in the independent media, we have to. That's our damn job. But that's just my opinion.
What did you think about when I referred to Trump just being good for ratings versus Trump being made news? I mean, I will say in entertainment, that's almost across the board. Like popular music isn't necessarily what people want. Popular music is what's made to be popular.
I'll address that. I think that Trump is a great example of that. We have seen for the very first time the news is not reporting the news; it's making the news. But we've seen that for a very long time. It's like the news creates these moral panics, and that's what the Trump phenomenon was. It was the news creating a moral panic about Trump, and overselling him. Like I think, to the surprise of everyone, including Trump, he was good for ratings, and so they made him seem like a bigger threat than he actually was. And I don't think it was a conspiracy. I think, like you said, it was good for business. And in pretending like he was real, they made him real. And that's a very frightening thing to come to terms with. And I remember Lee Fang from The Intercept said something, he tweeted out, the election's already over, Clinton's already won, and the news media is pretending as though Trump still had the chance to keep ratings going. And I tweeted back, it's like, you got to remember, the news media pretending like Trump had a chance in the first place was what gave him the chance. And so at a certain point, we have to come to terms with the fact that maybe the news is creating reality, not reporting it. And that's a very, very frightening thing to come to terms with, especially when we see who's in charge of the news. Insofar that we have a bunch of corporations that are creating reality through some kind of very, very heavy propagandizing, very, very heavy gaslighting. And so you see it for everything. You see it from, like, when people think that, the knockout game is this big epidemic, or the news is simply creating reality. And it's like, it's no longer the fourth estate, it's no longer any of these sort of lofty ideals. It is now just stenographers and I don't know, the media equivalent to the guy on the corner with the sign that says the end is nigh.
Public relations, right? I mean, George Orwell talked about journalism that doesn't challenge the government is simply public relations.
It's double plus ungood.
Well, and I think from a somewhat ironic source, Anchorman 2, the scene where there's the car chase scene and he goes to it live, I think that rather encapsulates the phenomena that you guys are talking about pretty well, and that they take something that wasn't news before and now it's news, and now it becomes a legitimate thing that people are paying attention to because you brought it to their attention, and in the way that you do it with the graphics and the sound and the the presentation.
And I mean, Nick made a good. Sorry, Nick made a great analogy with pop music, and it's like, how many times have you heard a song that you hate on the radio, only to be singing it later, as though you actually like it, and be like, oh my god, they've won. Not only do you sing it, but you download it on iTunes, you put it on your media, because there's
a word for this. It's manufacturing consent.
Right.
There is a word for it.
And Chomsky's been talking about this for over 40 years. And this is very well understood in the public relations and marketing industry. And it's something that, human cognitive patterns, we respond to emotion. And Al Gore, for whatever neoliberal policies he had in the 90s, The Assault on Reason is an excellent book. And he basically tracks the progression of how emotional content that speaks to your limbic side has become what media uses as its kind of pushing point for getting eyeballs. And, we see it on internet marketing as well. All these, one weird trick to grow your X, right? Like, these are things that are common ploys, and they're done by media, they're done on the internet. And it is something that's pervasive and that's scary. I think that grassroots media really needs to focus on, independent media needs to focus on expanding its breadth and getting people, because you do see a lot of millennials, a lot of young people who, I think, to Nick's point, like, the danger here is that people will go back to sleep after this election. Like, once all the emotional affect of the whole stress of the election goes away, give it a month or two. And we have to really see what people are talking about and caring about in January. And if they really don't want to be involved in this anymore. And that's where I think that independent media needs to be very aggressive about stoking the flames and using this opportunity to say, listen, we know that CNN is full of shit. We know that half the media sources that you're consuming, Ezra Klein was called out in the Podesta emails, the guy that runs Vox, as somebody that they could rely on to kind of promote the Clinton message. And we need to kind of cultivate independent media sources. I think what's also interesting here, and I kind of leave it up to Project Sanity, I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on this, because I think that the ultimate problem is scale, in the sense that as the Young Turks has gotten bigger, you kind of see the way that they, Jimmy Dore is still aggressive, but you see kind of Anna and Cenk kind of, Cenk had his who I'm voting for, and that was kind of very clear. I think that the properties of organizations, whether they're media, whether they're small business or anything, change depending on how many people they have, how many eyeballs they have. How does independent media keep itself from kind of selling out as it gets more successful?
Well, I mean,
can I interject real quick with because we haven't talked about an election update. Clinton is winning Texas, folks. Clinton is currently in the lead in Texas, and she is slamming him in Pennsylvania. Trump is back to leading in Florida, and it's really tight in Michigan and Ohio. I just wanted to draw that people's attention to that real quick. I know we're doing a lot of coverage, but I want to try to get these updates in there. But go ahead, everybody else. I'll answer that question last.
Well, this comes down to, like you said, scale. And the more people you have watching you, the more diverse opinions you have to try to appeal to. And at a certain point, the goals of a business are antithetical to the goals of let's say, a fringe movement, because a business's goals are to attract as many people as possible, and I would say the progressive movement is to challenge the status quo as much as possible. So you get to a point where you're trying to grow your business, but you sort of saturate. You've saturated your market. You've gained as many viewers from your market as possible. And see if they start expanding and become more and more palatable to the general public. I think the Young Turks does a pretty good job, but like I said, they're more of the same problem I had with someone like Jon Stewart, and definitely someone like Trevor Noah, or what's his face? God, the other one, John Oliver, in that they have taken to only criticizing the excesses of the system. And it's something that Chris Hedges talks about too, about why Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert were not really satire, and it was because they only criticized the excess of the neoliberal system. They only criticized the excesses of the two-party duopoly, Trump being one of those things. They refused to criticize the fundamental aspects of it, which is what satire is truly meant to do. When you compare something like a Common Sense by oh my gosh, I forgot what it's called, by
Thomas Paine.
A modest proposal. When you compare something like A Modest Proposal that critiques the very system of imperialism in of British imperialism in Ireland, it comes across as quaint, because all they're doing is taking poking fun at the craziest aspects and not really going at the heart of the matter. And so I think that it's very easy to criticize police brutality. It becomes much harder to criticize the neoliberal foundations for racism. It becomes very hard to, to make that leap from, well, honestly, police, so insofar that they are racist and acting in racist ways, are simply reflections of our racist society. And they're not the only racist structure that exists in Black communities. So are the hospitals, so are the schools, so are the roads, so are the water treatment plants. It's just racist infrastructure. And that reflects the racist ideology that America's built upon. And that's a conversation that's very hard to have and have it appeal to the majority of people. And so, but it's like, but here's the thing: if you're having conversations about racism and people go away feeling unimplicated by that, then you're not doing your job properly. Like if you're having a deep conversation about sexism and racism and the problems of society, and one of your viewers goes away and they go, "Well, I'm not contributing to that problem," then you failed because we all are by nature of existing in this sort of this structure. We're supposed to be, we're supposed to be challenged on our assumptions, but they're not interested in doing that anymore. A lot of it is just like, here's how we make liberals feel good about their liberalism.
Let me expand that. So how would you frame that same argument in an international sense? I had Benjamin Studebaker on my show yesterday, and we spoke about he basically advocates for the left to drop the anti-imperialist message because it's not popular. And I feel like that's a mistake, because if you look at what happened when we dropped a lot of domestic issues and triangulated on those issues, we're living 35 years after the results of that. And I'm wondering, if we do that on foreign policy or continue to do that, because foreign policy was one thing that the left never really came all the way along on anyway. But what would be the effects of that? How can we say to somebody, hey, when you voted for George Bush and he did all these things, you materially supported a war criminal? That's a hard truth to give somebody, but it's just like, how do we navigate that?
I don't know. That's a hard conversation to have in a country where people are so against being criticized. I think our society we talk about American exceptionalism, but really it's American insecurity. Like criticizing the foundations of American society makes people very, very uncomfortable, especially if it implicates them. And I also want to address another thing that another part of the question Nick asked about, oh my gosh, I forgot. Never mind then. I won't address it because I forgot what it was. Like it was so long ago. But I don't know. But here's my biggest fear about what you just brought up, Nick. And I brought up on a show with Noah a few days ago that in 2020, we're going to have 18 to 20-year-olds voting for the first time who have never lived in a country that has not been under war, that has not been engaged. Because I'm assuming we're still going to be engaged in drone warfare in 2020. I hope we are not, but I'm assuming we are. And so we're going to have a generation of voters who have never known not war. And so the idea of peace as being a legitimate political priority for the left is going to disappear because it's going to have been normalized. It's like I have cousins who are going to be voting who in 2020 who don't know America not being at a war with terror. Like we've been at the war against terror is a perpetual war, and it's obviously it's a front for imperialism, but eventually that is going to go away. That's it.
The resistance to that, right?
Yeah, the resistance to that. We've seen it already. Let's talk about when we talk about, okay, I can't vote for Clinton because of the drone program and her obviously going to expand the drone program, or I don't like Obama because he has expanded the drone program. People now say, well, that's just war. What are you going to do? You're going to not drone strike Syria? You're going to not do that? It's like, yeah.
I think we see seeds though that we can take heart in. That our generation has a far better opinion of socialism, for example, and Bernie Sanders than previous generations have had. We are much more actively questioning sexism and systematic and institutional racism than any generation in the past. I agree that it's a concern. I think that one of the things that Republicans have been very successful in, that I want progressives and people who are dem exiting and trying to grow the Green Party to kind of learn and model from, they stole the language of morality. They stole the language of ethics. They talked about family values in the 80s as this idea that I have the right to go into a woman's uterus and tell her how she has a baby. There are fundamental moral and ethical questions that we have to ask about, how we have drones just at the click of a button, like a video game, end an entire group of people's lives, and the after effects that we're having in Libya and Syria. And I think that we as progressives kind of in our own circles are able to have those conversations and all kind of morally agree with it. I think expanding that, and it's very common now for the radical centrists and the liberals to really kind of intellectualize and kind of on the news give these analyses that remove the element of heart and remove the element of this kind of moral and ethical value to it. And so it looks more and more like the Democrats are this kind of egghead, data-driven analytic party, which is something that I'm sensitive to as an engineer, that seems to be kind of how we're pushing the world with software and with computers. But there is, fundamentally a question that we have to ask about universal basic income, about imperialistic policies, and how we can promote the moral elements of that. I think that resonates with people. And
I think Nick has an excellent point about asking big questions and giving big answers and talking about doing big projects as we were earlier. But I think Adair wants to get in here with an election update, I imagine.
Yes, actually, real quick, and then I want to let you finish that response to those questions, and then I'm going to pop it after you. But Texas has switched back to Trump. Ohio was briefly Trump. I think she's back to winning. It's very close in those states. It's incredibly close in Michigan, and she's only leading by 4,000 votes right now in Pennsylvania. So those are the states to watch right now. He's leading in Florida again. He's retaken Texas, and he's within striking distance in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. And here's why we watch those states, folks. Because Hillary Clinton is going to win in New York, she's going to win in California, she's going to win Oregon and Washington. This we know. What has been of concern to the pollsters are Ohio, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. If Trump manages to win 2 out of those 3 states, you can in addition to Florida and Texas, you can pretty much say Trump will win the election outright, because those are going to be the states that determine what's going on. She's also losing in Virginia still, and she was losing in North Carolina last I checked.
Well, it's too bad we don't have an electoral system where that can't happen, where it can't come down to literally 2 states. It's almost like the electoral college and winner-take-all system is a bad goddamn idea. But let's not focus. Don't think about that. Don't think about that. Because if you think about that, you have to question the foundations of our American institution of voting.
I don't remember if you did the numbers or not, but like how many millions of votes somebody could get and still get 0 votes in the electoral college. Like they could get tens of millions of votes and still get 0 votes in the electoral college.
After we have this conversation, I don't know if we're taking a break soon or not, because we do have other stuff happening and people are, tired. I'm sure we'll come back after a break.
I know I was definitely going to be joining in the broadcast right around the 9:00 Eastern hour, and how we're going to handle that exactly, I'm not sure, but I'm going to be handing over, trying to wrangle you guys off to her more or less. And
I mean, but I do want to
try to keep it easy on Dave, so maybe some of us will take a break or whatever, just so that he has less frames.
I remember what I was going to. I was going to say in relation to other Nick's point, not Black Nick, but not Black Nick, and insofar as like people like what happens after election, I think that the media is like literally designed to make us fall back asleep, to exhaust us with this process, so that we go back asleep. And part of that is the apocalyptic rhetoric, the idea that we staved off the apocalypse, so now we can relax and just go back to sleep because we made a meaningful change by simply preventing the end of the world. And I mean, that's very troubling. Like we don't treat the voting process as one stage in democracy. We treat it as the entire democratic process. We treat voting for the presidency as the entire democratic process, and we just never ever try to expand that conversation about what democracy truly entails, which is the everyday social life of discussing the material and economic conditions of reality. But
what I think really important on there is the normalization of all these things, like we've touched on earlier, and how normal the idea is that going back to sleep is okay. We found people that aren't going to bring the apocalypse. We don't have to pay attention anymore. We can go back to letting them run it, and they'll be fine. I think that is critical and really important.
Voice.
And we have our guest who joined us earlier. You might have heard him over audio briefly, but looks like he's ready to come up. And I just wanted to go ahead and give you a chance. You started the question that spurred us off in our starting conversation, but go ahead and get in here, and Dave will get you up. It looks like you're video might be stuttering in and out, so maybe we won't be able to get you right away. But I did want to just let's see here, take a look here. Yeah, and Florida, it looks like Trump's starting to widen out his lead a little bit. And a note that has been going around is that the Florida Panhandle voting was still open for another 13 minutes, I believe. So there's still people voting in Florida, and it's in the Trump-heavy area. So, and there's still lines as well.
He's
So
ahead in the.
he's probably going.
He's ahead in the.
That's what it's looking like.
Yeah, he's
Clinton is
ahead in
destroying
the,
him in Pennsylvania right now, like 72% to 18%.
That seems absurd.
He's way ahead in the popular
What
vote
percent?
too.
Well, we still have California and New York, and that'll change the results there significantly, I suspect. But what percentage do we have reporting in Pennsylvania right now?
Pennsylvania.
I'll have to double check on that. I didn't get an exact number. I think right now she's got something
Okay,
a little. She's got
Yeah,
over
seven-
10,000 votes. I want to say closer to 20,000. He's got maybe 4 or 5.
Okay, so low vote numbers
Low
right
voting, but she's at this point she's dominating him in Pennsylvania. And I think this is more or less. You're probably seeing Philadelphia County, possibly Allegheny County.
Probably can't. I
Uh,
don't know.
now. I'm taking a peek there.
Okay, next.
Gotcha.
I think it's time for a break because, at least for me, because I'm tired and we've been on for about an hour. So let's take a break until we can switch over streamers and bring a Noah in. If no one is objecting towards that, maybe back around 9-ish.
Let's
No,
go ahead and
you
just
should-
give everybody a quick moment to say something before, just in case they don't come back when we come back on the air. Just to get a chance to say something about the election. So we'll start. Let me see what Dave has queued up here. We will start with, I guess, Adair, go ahead and say something before you go.
All right. Well, so yeah, I'm gonna actually take a break here right after this. Go have myself dinner. But I just want to say, folks, that here's the thing. A question was asked earlier: how do we do things? How do we have genuine conversations about issues that are tough? And I think it starts with who you listen to. If you are willing to step out of that echo chamber of everyone agrees with you and listen to the hard pointed questions and actually sit down and do introspection, I think that's how we go forward. I think that's how we at Project Sanity do things. One of the biggest things that we do before our shows is there's a heavy amount of introspection. Why do we believe the things that we do? Why do we say what we do? Why do we espouse the ideals and stick to the issues that we do? We do it because we truly believe in them. And one of the things that we have to do, that I know I personally have to do, is every day I have to own my own problematic issues. I have to own that ingrained sexism. I have to own that ingrained imperialism. I have to own that ingrained racism that you are brought up with simply by existing in American society. And I see you over there, Brandon, making jokes. But it is true. Everybody but Brandon here has a level of introspection that we do before the show, because otherwise we cannot truly come.
Whoa. I am part of being
Brandon, you're
part
a
of being a
narcissist. That doesn't count as introspection.
is
We'll
being
transition to Brandon here.
introspective.
Go ahead. Try to keep it under a minute.
It's the absolute end of the world, and I hope you're all ready for the apocalypse. So, grab your machetes, grab your cookie mask and your ATVs, and strap leather all over yourself, and get ready to, for a Trump presidency or something. I don't know.
My go bag's ready, so I don't know about you guys, but I guess
If you'd like to join my roving band of cannibals, send an email to projectsanity@gmail.com with your stats and your capabilities in apocalypse, and we can get things going.
All right, Nick Nolan, if you want to get in here, just I believe you're going to be coming back, but if you just wanted to, before we go on break, just a quick thought on either what we've covered or what people have to look forward to when we come back. You might be muted.
I'm sorry. I'll put my mic on mute when I'm not talking, but I just want to kind of get that out there. Like, the introspection is important, but what we're trying to do is bring the median voter over to our way of thinking. We have to change the consciousness of the median voter. And I'm just saying, how do we get there? When we're battling against mass propaganda the way we are. And I'm not sure how you get there, because like I said, even though the reality of the actions amount to just almost like a pure evil kind of deal, nobody wants to be called evil. Nobody wants to be associated with supporting evil. And so just that, they just don't want to accept that truth at all because it's a hideous truth. And you can even expand that across multiple issues when you try to talk about what Hillary Clinton is. You know, I'm not saying she's pure evil, but when you explain that she's actually not good and that she's very problematic, you know, they kind of reject the entire truth. They reject the entire assumption of corruption. They reject how bad that is, and they reject all the past deeds that she's done that have been problematic, all for this illusion of her being some sort of incremental step towards what they want to accomplish. So I'm just wondering, how do you overcome that? In the primary with Bernie Sanders, he comes to Black people and he says, I'm going to bring jobs. I'm going to reinvest in the schools. I'm going to get your youth working. I'm going to get healthcare for your sick, and I'm going to improve the retirement system. And everybody says, no, we don't want that. We want nothing. And it's just like, how do you fight that? You know, you basically have a populace that's no longer able to well, I'm not going to use the word rational, but we have a populace that's no longer really critically thinking and really objectively looking at things, you know, from a different perspective other than the one that's been fed from them. And I'm just wondering, how do we kind of overcome that?
I think that's an excellent question and something I think we can think about quickly over the break. One of the things that I just wanted to get out there was just, and everybody's kind of touched on it, but with the rhetoric that's out there, the propaganda that's out there, we're running out of language to describe things that are even more hideous or heinous than whatever's already out there. So like, if Donald Trump does win or Clinton does win, we stave off the apocalypse, it's going to be hard to make anybody seem more dangerous than Donald Trump was. We'll actually be running out of words to describe it. I think ways to pass that on. Go ahead.
If you look at what they did with George Bush, you know, they like wiped him like he never existed after he was out of there. And when he was in there, they made all sorts of excuses for him. He's not a true conservative. I expect that exact same playbook to happen with Mr. Trump.
Yep, absolutely. And I guess any other closing thoughts? I think
that was it for me.
I might have had one more thing I just wanted to mention. What was it? I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
I'll just say that the projection is that the GOP will keep the House. So there's one branch of government that isn't going to be very helpful.
Yeah.
So see what happens with the Senate. But yeah, it's going to be a fun time, guys. Fun 4 years. Woohoo!
Yeah. A reminder: the House is, you know, theoretically one of the more powerful branches, right?
Yeah, that's where taxes are supposed to start, and so budget. So we'll see what ends up.
Senate is on track to turn blue. Senate is on track to be blue. House, like you said, is on track to be red. And Ohio, with 25% reporting, Clinton leads by 10,000 votes. So watch out.
The interesting thing that I had noticed, and I haven't had a chance to really look closely at the numbers yet, but it does look like that Trump may be leading in some places that are legalizing cannabis, showing that not necessarily like the connection between Democrats and cannabis legalization might not be as strong as it was previously. That it might be having. Are
you saying potheads are going to elect Trump?
Well, that's what I'm just saying.
They're in battleground states, right? I mean, it's battleground
states. People
states.
that are voting to legalize. There are some places where Florida, for instance, right now, their medical legalization is passing.
Right, it's passed.
But Trump is also winning. So Hillary's losing.
Right.
But medical cannabis is winning. So that this is a little interesting tidbit before we go to break. And Adair might have one more thing to share. Yeah. And then we're going to go to a break real quick. And Noah will be back with a lot of the same folks here and with some special guests of her own. But go ahead, Adair.
When we talk about interesting tidbits and how voting turns, I just want to point out Trump is winning almost every county in Ohio except the counties with Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cleveland. And he trails by 10,000 votes. Just want to point that out, folks. It's going to be one hell of a night, so stick with us because I'm sure after this break, and some of us have had dinner, we're going to be all right back talking about the same stuff. So keep it here. Project Sanity. I know it's coming up. I can't wait to see y'all again.
Yep. Absolutely. Progressive Army, thanks. And Grossman's going to be helping out, and Noah's going to be here. I think going to be some more guests, and Nick Nolan's definitely going to be hanging around, I believe. And so stick around. Check us out, projectsanity.org or Progressive Army, and Benjamin Dixon's channel. So thank you guys, and we'll be back shortly.